Peter Thiel might be the most influential investor in Silicon Valley. And in this video, I'm going to teach you how to model the same thinking that Peter's used to develop relationships with people like Mark Zuckerberg, where he was the first investor in Facebook, Patrick Collison, where he was the first investor in Stripe, and Elon Musk, where he was an early investor in SpaceX. It comes down to looking for secrets in people and in companies. And if you can develop Peter's same unquenchable thirst for secrets, you can live a richer life. Let's start with Thiel's famous interview question. In job interviews, Thiel famously asks, "What very important truth do very few people agree with you on?" But why does he ask challenging questions like this? Well, with it, Thiel can identify heterodox thinkers who aren't blinded by mimetic dogmas or intellectual fashions. He insists that there are secrets left to uncover. Some are small and incremental, but some are also valuable secrets that are big enough to shake the world. In fact, spend enough time in Thiel's intellectual orbit, and it'll lead you to a book that has guided his thinking on secrets. It's by the philosopher René Girard, and it's called Things Hidden Since the Foundation of the World. The title comes from the book of Matthew, chapter 13, verse 35, which reads, "I will proclaim what has been hidden since the foundation of the world." Thiel believes that there are two kinds of secrets, or another way to put it, unconventional truths. The first kind are hidden in places where nobody looks, and you can find them, but you're gonna have to dig in some obscure areas. And then other secrets are hidden in plain sight. They're so obvious that nobody even thinks about them, and once you see them, once you learn about them, you just pinch yourself for not seeing them before.
Why didn't I think of that?
For example, Tesla was built on the second kind of secret, an observational secret. Elon Musk observed that clean technology was more of a social phenomenon than an environmental one. So he built a high-end car to take advantage of all the wealthy people who wanted to be pro-environment, but also drive a sexy car. Elon Musk detailed his four-step master plan to first, build a sports car that only rich people could buy. Second, use the profits to build an affordable car. Third, use those profits to build an even more affordable car. And fourth, while doing the above, also develop the infrastructure for the electric vehicle economy, with things like the Gigafactory and Tesla Power Packs. Another example is Airbnb, which discovered a secret, something they believed to be true, that other people thought was crazy, that people would be willing to travel halfway across the world and stay with strangers that they found on the internet. And now Airbnb is basically the main way that I travel. After working more on the product prototype, they then found a second secret, that people would be willing to rent out their entire homes and not even be there while strangers used it. And so the founders of Airbnb went from being jobless and $25,000 in credit card debt to pioneering a multi-billion-dollar industry and providing economic opportunity to more than 3 million hosts around the world. Now, you might be feeling a little bit discouraged that there's no more billion-dollar secrets out there. And look, I get it. Maybe you feel like Brian Chesky and Elon Musk took all the good secrets. But in 0 to 1, Thiel says, the big secret is that there are many secrets left to uncover. There are still many large white spaces on the map of human knowledge, and you can go discover them. So do it. Get out there and fill in the blank spaces. That brings us to a philosopher named Leo Strauss, who also inspired Thiel's attraction to secrets. Strauss is famous for an essay called Persecution and the Art of Writing. And in his writing, Strauss hid controversial truths behind esoteric writings that only careful readers would see behind. And that's why famous novelists often buried their true but unpopular ideas in the words of devils, villains, madmen, drunkards, and buffoons, who readers would be less suspicious of, which would give authors the liberty to share unpopular opinions. You know, Jesus Christ may have been the ultimate example of somebody who concealed their words. The philosopher John Locke, whose ideas inspired America's founding fathers, wrote that you shouldn't take Jesus' words plainly, because if he had told people exactly what he was up to, the Jewish and the Roman authorities would have taken away his life, because his teachings threatened the civic and governmental order of the time. And only by concealing what he actually meant could Jesus stay alive and spread his teachings. That way, they would only be shared with a small and select group of people. And make no mistake, even today, forbidden truths are exchanged in closed forums, corner offices on the 72nd floor, and private conferences like TED, Summit, and Davos. They're shared in whispers, not really in shouts, because most things worth knowing are said with a tinge of trepidation. Or, as Susan Sontag once said, the only interesting ideas are heresies. Thiel's obsession with secrets echoes Proverbs chapter 25, verse 2, which states, "It is the glory of God to conceal a matter. To search out a matter is the glory of kings." And often the best secrets are hidden in plain sight. And in part because of this Bible verse, Thiel reveres secrets. He thinks their keeping and their finding are sacred acts. Okay, so back to Elon Musk. He had found his secret, set his definite vision, and then went full execution mode. And reflecting on Musk's success, Thiel observed how, quote, Tesla knew that fashion drove interest in clean tech. It became somewhat of a status symbol to appear green, even if it meant driving a less than sexy Prius or a Honda Insight. Those cars only made drivers look cool by association with the famous eco-conscious movie stars who own them as well. So Tesla decided to build cars that made drivers look cool. Leonardo DiCaprio, for example, replaced his Prius for an expensive looking Tesla Roadster. Now, the people behind Tesla, Airbnb, and many of the Silicon Valley unicorns aren't just lucky. Sure, luck is involved in finding secrets, but with the right kind of intellectual curiosity, you'll see how discovering valuable and unconventional truths is a skill that you can develop. And with that, let's talk about obsessive curiosity. Most people only do what's guaranteed to be profitable. They'll study only what's guaranteed to be productive, and the shorter the time horizon, the better. And that's why risk-averse parents and educators push children down these conventional paths. Parents enroll their kids in the same schools and the same extracurriculars to help them get into the same colleges so they can work for the same corporations and get cozy six-figure jobs where they can get paid to shop online or think about fantasy football at work. In 2007, more than half of Harvard graduates went to work in investment banking or management consulting. And at my alma mater, career advisors pushed us towards secure but complacent careers at large corporations like the three-letter media companies and the big four accounting firms. Too many of our top people aren't putting their differentiated skill sets to work. They graduate from the best schools in the world only to burn their attention on standardized checklists and the high school cafeteria game theory of corporate politics. Remember how there was a cool kids table and a weird kids one? Just as you have to win the favor of jocks in high school, you also have to befriend your boss in the real world of professional life. We don't need a 17th bottled water brand at CVS or a 28th Cliff Bar competitor at Walgreens. We need our best and our brightest people working on important problems that wouldn't be solved otherwise. That begins with obsessive curiosity, even when it's not obviously productive. My favorite example of Thiel's curiosity comes from an investor named Michael Gibson, who used to work for him. One day, he walked into the office where he saw Thiel in a conference room with 7 people. 7 people? Why so serious? Confused, Gibson walked over to Thiel's assistant to ask what they were doing in there. She said that he was with a bunch of Leo Strauss scholars, and together they were reading the Untitled Chapter in The City and Man by Strauss. And from 9 to 5 that day, they sat in that room, studying one chapter. That chapter had almost nothing to do with investing. It's the patience to sit through dense books looking for gems of ideas that make thinkers like Thiel so successful. He's not getting smart through Blinkist or the hottest new business podcast or not even Forbes articles. He's letting his curiosity drive him into deep intellectual exploration. That's not the only story of Thiel's curiosity either. One friend attended an intense weekend conference that Thiel hosted where he flew in a bunch of academics and intellectuals to study René Girard's ideas. And in 2004, Thiel hosted and funded this conference to discuss some of the philosophical implications of the September 11th terrorist attacks on American soil. Thiel even contributed an essay to the conference called The Straussian Moment, which built upon ideas from philosophers like Carl Schmitt, Leo Strauss, and René Girard. All of them have controversial elements in their philosophy, but Thiel subscribes to Strauss's idea that, quote, even in the most liberal or open-minded regimes, there exist certain deeply problematic truths. In the essay he wrote around the conference, Thiel argued that the 9/11 attacks, quote, called into question the entire political and military framework of the 19th and 20th centuries and indeed of the modern age. And in true Thiel fashion, following his curiosity without worrying too much about how those ideas would pay off or be publicly perceived led him to co-founding Palantir, which is now a public company. And that brings us to the central lesson of this video. Don't worry about the productivity of your curiosity.
Now please, don't take this too literally. I'm not saying that you can just sit back and binge Netflix all weekend and magically become successful. My point is that learning obsessively, challenging yourself relentlessly, and thinking on a longer time horizon than your peers will help you find the kind of secrets that Thiel looks for. Balance the intensity you need to take action with the patience you need to discover new ideas. Because trying too hard to justify everything you're doing with maximum productivity will paradoxically limit what you can ultimately achieve. And that's not all. It will sap the life of the sweet serendipity that makes learning such a joyous adventure.
And in Matthew chapter 17, verse 13, a biblical verse that Thiel often refers to, it says, quote, "Enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it."
But David, if the gate is so narrow, how do you find it in the first place? Look for paradoxical truths. And when I look at Thiel, I see an appreciation of those paradoxes. I see that if logic is the key to scientific truths, then paradoxes are the key to psychological ones. And many deep ideas are counterintuitive. So when you find contradictory ideas, start digging. One line by the famous physicist Niels Bohr states, "The opposite of a fact is a falsehood, but the opposite of one profound truth may very well be another profound truth." And you can see how Thiel embraces these profound contradictions when he evaluates talent, when he looks for strange and extreme combinations of traits. He's discovered that highly creative entrepreneurs are walking contradictions, with a combination of skills that you rarely find in the world. They often have opposing and sometimes contradictory personality traits. They're nerds and they're athletes, vulnerable and confident, open-minded and closed-minded too. And these combinations lead to people that make you say, well, they're unlike anybody else I've ever met before. And from Thiel, we learned that society's creative well is watered with these rare but precious opposites.
Obsessive curiosity is a trade-off that most people just aren't really willing to make. When you're obsessively curious but don't worry about the productivity of your curiosity, the majority of your intellectual explorations will end up going nowhere. And I get it, that's frustrating. But, and this is what Thiel understands, the few that work will be transformative. And it's kind of like the classic example of the 80-20 rule. And in Thiel's case, as an investor, this power law has unlocked a ton of economic value. Once you have a secret, something that you know to be true that other people either don't know or they just think it's crazy, you have an advantage over the whole world. You can make bold bets with confidence. And Thiel opposes the idea that luck is all-powerful. He encourages human agency and believes in the power of a single individual to bend the future to their will. Thiel believes that we attribute too much to luck, which stops us from actually doing things. As he proclaimed, you are not a lottery ticket, and you can either dispassionately accept the universe for what it is or put your dent in it, but not both. For example, if you treat startup investments like a series of lottery tickets, you won't think hard about them, and as a result, you will fail, he says. Whenever he makes an investment, Thiel asks, is this a business that I have enough confidence in that I would consider joining it myself? And if yes, he'll consider an investment, and if the answer is no, he won't. Thiel doesn't see the world as a mere distribution of luck-based outcomes. Instead, he praises conviction, bets on transcendent founders, and invests in the kind of companies that he would want to work for. The problem, Thiel says, is that people believe that there are fewer and fewer secrets left to be discovered. But in order to make radical innovations, you have to believe that there are lucrative secrets hidden in plain sight, just waiting for you to find them. If you go with the wisdom of crowds and disbelieve in your ability to make big bets, you limit your upside and reduce your own agency. You lose faith in the power of an individual to make a significant difference in the world. And when the masses doubt the potential for a company to succeed, but you have a secret that makes you think otherwise, well, Bet big. That's when you get giant returns because of your limited downside and unlimited upside. Speaking from experience, every industry that I've ever been involved with is wildly inefficient. I grew up thinking that things were the way they were because an intelligent adult made it so. And now I align more with that Steve Jobs mantra that, quote, life can be much broader once you discover one simple fact. Everything around you that you call life was made up by people who were no smarter than you. And you can change it. You can influence it. Once you learn that, you'll never be the same again. And to explore what Steve Jobs meant by this, let's talk about cults. The author Russ Duthett gives an example in his Thiel-inspired book, The Decadent Society. In it, he argues that people don't believe in secrets like they once did. And he points to a Netflix documentary called Wild Wild Country about an Indian guru named Osho and his American devotees who tried to build a utopian commune in the Oregon desert back in the 1980s. And though Duthett says that the effort was driven by lunacy, he actually admires the boldness, the yearning for transcendence, and the willingness to believe in a life-changing message from a single individual. Just as Duthett laments the loss of spiritual ambition in the Western world, Thiel laments the way that technology has stagnated since the 1970s. During that time, cults have shown up less frequency and with smaller influence too. Don't get me wrong, I'm not advocating for cults, but their decline reveals how we've lost faith in secrets and fresh ways of looking at the world. Maybe in tune with Thiel and Duthett, the number of cults in a society is a proxy for society's willingness to accept new ideas. And if so, the same energy that inspires people to start a cult is the same energy that inspires people to make radical innovations that Thiel says have declined. For example, at the beginning of the book review that Thiel wrote about Duthett's book, The Decadent Society, Thiel writes, "As for the 747 jumbo jets that we are still flying today, 50 years after their 1969 debut, they're a sign of what Russ Duthett calls decadence, and it's an example of what Thiel calls technological stagnation. As Thiel famously said, we asked for flying cars, and instead, we got 140 characters."
I don't know what Thiel would say about Osho's commune, but he wouldn't badmouth it entirely. Thiel wants us to look for secrets so that we can work on projects that other people aren't working on and think in ways that other people aren't thinking. He laments the sameness of people who talk like everybody else, think like everybody else, and act like everybody else. The people without a secret or a vision for a better world.
Copycats are everywhere. Just look at the ways that nonprofits tend to pursue the same ends and the ways that companies, too, tend to copy each other. Thiel believes that progress comes from people who do things differently, and it's those secrets that allow companies to monopolize their market and generate outsized profits. Thiel writes, "The best projects are likely to be overlooked, not trumpeted by a crowd. The best problems to work on are often the ones nobody else even tries to solve. In other words, the best projects are secrets." But if Thiel is so ambitious, why does he focus on startups? Thiel says a startup is the largest endeavor over which you can have definite mastery. You can have agency not only over your own life, but over a small and important part of the world. Great companies, he says, are a conspiracy to change the world. And when you share your secret with somebody, they become a fellow conspirator. Every successful company is built on a secret, a specific reason for success that others don't see. For that reason, we should take the hidden paths in life. You can see the essence of his philosophy of looking for secrets in one of his favorite books, The Lord of the Rings. It says, "Still round the corner there may wait a new road or a secret gate. And though we may pass by them today, tomorrow we may come this way, and take the hidden paths that run towards the moon or to the sun." Finding secrets starts with escaping the intellectual spotlight, escape the mainstream media, and escape the conventional career track that basically everybody is trained to follow. Take a leap of faith and escape the conventional realm too. And look, I get it. Doing what everybody else is doing is both safe and comforting. Who doesn't want that? And as humans, we hate to be laughed at, and blazing our own trail to do something unique exposes us to risk, criticism, and ridicule.
But hidden paths are ultimately the most lucrative because they lead to secrets. And following them begins with the information that you consume. Skip the conventional news cycle, but double down on measured consumption. Read more about history and less about the present. Ignore society's recommendations for what to consume and Refresh your learning habits like you're shaking an Etch-a-Sketch. And remember, what you should consume looks nothing like what you were taught to consume. So rebel against the mainstream spotlight, find some trusted curators, and chart your own path instead. And you can start doing that by asking Thiel's famous interview question: what important truth do very few people agree with you on? Only then will you find the kinds of secrets that make Thiel one of the world's best investors.